My name is Emily Carter, and the night my family humiliated me was supposed to be a celebration. It was my parents' 45th wedding anniversary, a milestone my mother had been planning for nearly a year. She wanted everything perfect. Not emotionally perfect, visually perfect. The kind of night people would photograph and talk about afterward, the kind of night where appearances mattered more than people. They rented out a private banquet room at a country club just outside Naperville, Illinois. Crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, old trim place cards handwritten in my mother's careful cursive, a live pianist in the corner playing soft jazz, 75 guests, extended family, church friends, business associates, neighbors, people who didn't really know us but thought they did. And then there was me. I arrived early like I always did, not because anyone asked me to, because it was expected. I wore a navy blue dress I'd bought on clearance 2 years earlier, something simple and modest, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. I'd learned a long time ago that attention was not meant for me. My younger sister Lauren arrived an hour later, exactly on time, fashionably late enough to make an entrance. Her husband Mark stepped out of their BMW first, straightening his tailored jacket, checking his watch like a man who owned the room before even entering it. Lauren followed, glowing, pregnant with their second child, hair professionally styled, heels I knew cost more than my monthly rent. My mother practically floated across the room when she saw her. "Oh, sweetheart," she gushed, placing a hand on Lauren's stomach. "You look radiant." Then she noticed me standing a few feet away, holding a box of extra place cards. "Emily," she said, "not unkindly, not kindly either, kindly either." "Can you ask the staff if they've chilled the champagne?" I nodded. I always nodded. That's how my role in the Carter family worked. Lauren was the success, the story, the one people asked about. I was the helper, the background, the one who made sure things ran smoothly so others could shine. Growing up, the difference between us was subtle but constant. Lauren was praised loudly. I was corrected quietly. Lauren was encouraged to dream. I was encouraged to be realistic. When she announced she was going to law school, my parents told everyone. When I said I wanted to study art, my father asked how I planned to pay rent. So I adjusted. I became practical. I became useful. By the time guests started filling the room, I had already helped the waitstaff adjust seating, fixed a crooked banner, and quietly wiped a wine spill before my mother noticed. I hadn't eaten all day, but that was normal. There was always time to eat later. Or so I told myself. Dinner was served at 7. Toast followed. My father gave a speech about loyalty, commitment, and family. People applauded. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Then came the slideshow. 45 years of memories projected onto a massive screen. Wedding photos, baby pictures, family vacations, Lauren's graduations, Lauren's wedding, Lauren's baby shower. I appeared twice. Once as a blurry child in the background of a Christmas photo, once cropped halfway out of a family vacation picture. I noticed. No one else did. No one else did. When the applause faded, my mother stood and tapped her glass. "We have one more surprise tonight," she announced, smiling broadly. I felt something stir in my chest. A stupid, fragile hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe for once I was included. "We're announcing a family trip," she continued. To celebrate this milestone properly, a ripple of excitement moved through the room. "Hawaii," my father said proudly. 2 weeks, all expenses paid. Gasps, applause. Lauren actually squealed, covering her mouth. "Oh my God," she laughed. "The kids are going to freak out." I smiled, I really did. I let myself imagine it. Ocean air, sunlight, being somewhere beautiful for once, being part of something. I leaned slightly toward my mother and asked quietly, carefully, like someone stepping on thin ice. "When do we leave?" She didn't answer right away. She exchanged a glance with my father. The kind of glance that says now or never. Then she turned to me. "Oh, Emily," she said lightly, like this was a small detail. "You're not going." The room didn't go silent. That's what hurt the most. Conversations continued. Forks clinked. Laughter floated in the background. "I'm not," I asked. My father cleared his throat. "Someone needs to stay back and house sit," he said, "and help Lauren with the kids before they leave." Lauren avoided my eyes. "You understand," my mother added. "This trip is really for the family." The word hit me harder than any insult. The family. I felt 75 pairs of eyes on me now. Some curious, some uncomfortable, some pretending not to listen. I forced a smile. "Of course," I said. "That makes sense." So my hands were shaking under the table. Lauren reached over and squeezed my wrist. "You're so good with them," she whispered. "And it's not like you'd enjoy Hawaii anyway. You're more of a homebody." I nodded, because that's what I did. But something inside me didn't nod. It stood up, cracked, and quietly decided that this was the last night I would ever play my role. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I smiled when spoken to. I cleaned up when people left. I stacked chairs while my parents accepted congratulations. No one noticed when I slipped out early. I drove home alone, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I didn't cry. Not yet, because humiliation doesn't always feel like sadness at first. Sometimes it feels like clarity. And that night, sitting in my dark apartment, I finally saw the truth I'd spent my whole life avoiding. They didn't forget me. They chose me, as long as I stayed small. And that was the moment everything began to change. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside my window. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed. Notifications from the family group chat. Excited messages about packing lists, snorkeling plans, resort photos. Lauren kept sending like she wanted proof that this was real, and no one mentioned me. Not once. Around 3 a.m, I finally sat up and reached for my laptop. Not because I had a plan, not yet, but because I needed grounding. I needed to remember who I was when I wasn't being reduced to the helpful one. 3 years earlier, after my engagement ended quietly and without drama, another thing no one in my family thought was worth addressing. I'd started freelancing as a financial consultant for small online businesses. Nothing flashy. Quiet contracts, remote clients. Enough income to cover my bills and slowly, carefully build something of my own. What my family didn't know was that my biggest client wasn't small anymore, and neither was my stake. The company's name was Blue Harbor Logistics, a mid-sized shipping optimization startup based out of Seattle. I'd started working with them when they had 6 employees and a messy spreadsheet system. I rebuilt their entire financial structure, streamlined their reporting, and negotiated vendor contracts that saved them nearly $500,000 in the first year. They offered me equity instead of a raise. I said yes, not because I understood how valuable it would become, but because I liked the idea of owning something that was mine. Last year, Blue Harbor expanded internationally. 2 months ago, they were acquired. My equity payout sat quietly in a separate account, untouched. Enough to change my life. Enough that staying invisible had stopped being safe. By morning, I had a decision. And by noon, I had a plane ticket. Not to Hawaii, to San Diego. I sent one text before turning my phone on silent. "You won't be available to watch the kids. They're fighting," she said without preamble. "And not just arguing, screaming. About me?" I asked. "About control," she replied. Which is what it's always been about. She told me everything. My parents had arrived in Hawaii expecting relaxation. Instead, within hours, the illusion cracked. Lauren's kids were overtired, overwhelmed, and clinging. Mark, who had never spent more than a full afternoon alone with them, was already snapping. My mother tried to step in, barking instructions like she always did, but this time there was no Emily to quietly fix things. At dinner the first night, according to Claire, my father complained loudly about how ungrateful I was. My mother cried into her napkin. Lauren defended me half-heartedly, only until Mark snapped that I'd always been a problem. A problem. Problems are people who stop complying. By day 2, my parents started calling around. Friends, church members, even distant relatives. No one wanted to drop everything and fly out to babysit. And for the first time in their lives, they had to sit with the consequences of assuming someone would always clean up after them. Then something happened that none of them expected. Someone posted, a guest from the anniversary party. One of my mother's church friends shared a photo on Facebook. A smiling group shot from the dinner. My parents in the centre, Lauren glowing beside them. The caption read, "A beautiful celebration for Harold and Margaret Carter. Family is everything red. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was 3 decades of swallowed words." I commented, "A family is everything, unless you're told in front of 75 people that you don't count." The comment sat there for 3 minutes. Then the reactions started. People asked questions. People tagged others. Someone replied, "Oh wait, what?" My mother called me immediately. I didn't answer. By evening, the post was gone, but screenshots live. My inbox filled with messages from cousins, old neighbours, even one of my mother's bridge friends. He had no idea. "Is this true? You didn't deserve that." One message stood out. It was from Mrs. Reynolds, my father's former colleague's wife. "A woman who had once asked me if I worked or just helped out. I saw your comment. I want you to know, I noticed how hard you worked that night. I'm sorry no one said thank you. I cried for the first time since the dinner, not because of pain, because someone finally saw me." The next morning, my father called. I answered. "Emily," he said, his voice tight, "you embarrassed us." "No," I replied calmly. "I told the truth. You had no right to air family business. You had no right to decide I wasn't family," I said. Silence. Then my mother's voice cut in. She must have been on speaker. "We gave you everything," she snapped. "And this is how you repay us?" I laughed softly. "You gave me responsibilities," I said. "Not love." Lauren grabbed the phone. "You could have just talked to us," she said, her voice trembling. "Why did you have to do this?" "I did talk to you," I replied. "For years. You just didn't listen." Another silence, then Mark's voice low and angry. "You think money makes you better than us." That's when I realized something important. They knew, not the amount, not the details, but they knew I had something. "I think respect makes people better," I said, "and I'm done begging for it." I hung up. That afternoon, I signed paperwork that finalized my new life. New address, new boundaries, new rules. The girl who stayed behind was gone, and the family who thought I would always wait. They were about to learn what happens when the quiet one walks away. "The house stays," I said. "Mom lives here." Mark frowned. "That's not what we discussed." "You discussed," I corrected him. "I wasn't invited." Emily finally spoke, her voice thin. "You're acting like you own everything." I met her eyes and I'm acting like someone who showed up. They didn't like that answer. The lawyer meeting happened 2 weeks later. Dad insisted on being there even though it exhausted him. He wanted to look them in the eye. The lawyer read everything calmly. Assets, accounts, decisions, medical authority. Mark's face drained of colour. Emily started crying halfway through. Not quiet crying, but loud, angry, sobbing. Jessica interrupted. "This can't be right." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "It is." When it was over, Dad spoke. "I loved all of you," he said slowly. "But love isn't the same as trust." No one argued. They couldn't. After that day, my family stopped pretending we were a family. Holidays passed without invitations. Birthdays came and went. I got married quietly the following year. None of them were there. Dad passed away on a cold January morning, holding my hand. His last words were simple. "Thank you for asking the questions no one else would." At the funeral, Mark stood in the back. Emily left early. Jessica never showed. I didn't feel anger anymore, just clarity. Because sometimes one question doesn't break a family. It reveals it, and once exposed, there's no going back.